when we approach them from a place of curiosity and a place of compassion, well, then we can meet those same goals with more ease and with more self-confidence and less shame than when we enter into that discipline mindset where it's like, well, if I mess up on Monday, then I'm a failure on Tuesday. Whereas we're these like living, breathing, dynamic beings who have passions and flaws and beautiful intricacies that deserve to be heard and listened to and valued.
You're listening to Make Some Noise podcast, episode number 468 with guest Sarajane Case. Welcome to Make Some Noise podcast, your guide for strategies, tools, and insight to empower yourself. I'm your host, Andrea Owen, global speaker, entrepreneur, life coach since 2007, and author of 3 books that have been translated into 18 languages and are available in 22 countries. Each week, I'll bring you a guest or a lesson that will help you maximize unshakable confidence, master resilience, and make some noise in your life. You ready? Let's go. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm so glad that you're here. I will not sing for you. Sometimes I am in such a good mood, I feel like it, and I've spent the entire morning singing to my dog, but I won't do that for you. I won't. But I will tell you that registration closes on August 19th, 2022, in case you're listening to this way into the future, for my Daring Way retreat. And we have a couple spots open, and I want to make it quick. And I was thinking before I started recording, who is this for? I need to tell them if they're on the fence. If you hear yourself in any of these, then I want you to head on over to the info page. It's AndreaOwen.com/retreat. Okay, who is this Daring Way retreat for that I'm hosting in Asheville, North Carolina in September? It's for anyone who struggles with what to do with all of this information that you hear on the podcast. I mean, we're not going to go over all of the information that you've heard on 400 and something episodes, but we are going to go over a little bit of it, okay? It's for anyone who loves Brené Brown's work and you like her as a person, and that you also like me. You don't have to love me. You can if you want, but just that you like me. I figured you do if you listen to this podcast. All right, number 3, it's for anyone who would like a process of how to implement work that they learn, at retreats and things like that when you go home. It's a process that I'm going to teach you. Number 4, for anyone who struggles to open up and be vulnerable. I'm not going to force you into it, but it's sort of like baby steps in a place that I have curated with a bunch of other amazing women with you. Okay. And then the last, number 5, the Daring Way retreat is for anyone who needs a freaking break from their life. Honestly, who doesn't? You don't have to cook when you're there. I'm having it catered. And even if you have dietary restrictions, come on over. We got you covered. You don't have to make your bed if you don't want to. You don't have to get anybody a snack except yourself. You don't have to answer anybody's major inquiries via email from your boss or your coworkers. You don't have to do any of that. It's a nice little break. Beautiful scenery, beautiful house, amazing food, amazing people, amazing work. AndreaOwen.com/retreat. Registration closes soon, y'all. Okay. I have an amazing podcast episode per usual for you today. I was on Sarajane's podcast and I liked her so much. I said, you need to come and meet my people. You need to come and tell them about your work. So that's what we're doing. We're still in the spirituality/creativity, and I just wanted to give you a mishmash of all these different topics as they pertain to spirituality and creativity. So let me tell you a little bit about her. Sarajane Case is an author, podcaster, and speaker based out of, coincidentally, Asheville, North Carolina. She works with the Enneagram to help people find a creative balance between self-care and productivity so they feel great about how they spend their time. So without further ado, here is Sarajane. Sarajane, thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
I'm always excited to talk about the Enneagram, and we're going to talk about other topics as well. But before we actually jump into any of those questions, I've had a couple of guests on before that have talked about it. I haven't had anyone come on and just kind of give a brief overview of all 9 types. So for people who have never taken the test before, or maybe took it a long time ago and forgot what type they are, can you kind of walk us through just like a general, here's a description of the 9 types?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I like to think of the types as who we thought we had to be our whole lives. So it's kind of like this character we thought we had to play. Oh. And so I'll kind of give you the brief, like, this is what you think you have to be based off of the number. So for type 1s, they believe they have to be morally perfect. Type 2s believe they have to be lovable or likable. Type 3s believe they have to be successful. Type 4s believe they have to find their significance. Type 5s believe they have to be informed. Type 6s believe they have to be loyal and skeptical and careful and stable and safe. And type 7s believe they have to be satisfied. Type 8s believe they have to be strong, that only the strong survive. And type 9s believe they have to be easy to get along with.
Oh my gosh, I've never heard it explained that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think it helps me a lot with my Enneagram work to consider that, oh, I thought I had to be this. Like, I thought my whole life I had to be this. And so that doesn't mean that it's not sometimes a good thing.
Yeah.
But I don't have to be it all the time. I can be other things.
And so, well, it's funny. My husband has never taken the test, and he just, nothing against it. He just, I keep forgetting to like have him sit down, because it's like 72 questions or something. It's not just like a 10 question quiz on BuzzFeed or something. But no, you said the 6 was the one who needs to be, what was it? Like safe, secure, prepared.
Yeah, they're the ones I gave like all the words to: loyal, but skeptical, and safe and supported.
That is Mr. Jason Owen right there. Okay. So now I know what he is. And I know it's hard to, and you can't identify exactly just based on that short description. And I'm sure there's people listening who saw parts of themselves in a handful of them. So when people get the results of the test, is it usually like one stands out and like hands down that's you, or is it a combination? How does the point system work?
Yeah. So sometimes when you take the test, it's pretty common to mistype on the test, because it's like 40 to 50% accurate generally. Oftentimes because we're not always aware of our own motivations. And so when you get the test, I highly recommend maybe the top 3 answers that you get, you read the descriptions on whatever website you're taking your test on. And when you read the description, you're looking for a sensation of like, someone has followed me around my entire life. Mm-hmm. Like, who is watching me and documenting what I've done? And I will tell you, if I had taken this advice, I would have known my type the day I took the test. When I took the test, I got a type 2. I read my husband's result, which was type 7. And I thought, who read my journals and wrote them down? And then continued to believe I was a type 2 and try and figure out, when I realized I wasn't a type 2, it took me like 2 years to come back to type 7. So if you have that sensation of like, wow, this thing really seems to know me intimately, that's your type.
Okay. Because I remember, and I think I've mentioned this, we had someone else on the show, at least a year ago, I think. And I've taken the Enneagram 3 times. And the first 2 times I was a clear, like 8 was the winner as like my, that was my type. But then when I took it, I think in 2020 or 2021, I tied with 7, which was interesting to me. So I'm like even 7 and 8, which 7's always been like my second one. That's like, what is it? The enthusiast.
Yeah.
What is it?
Enthusiast.
Thank you. I was going to say the enthusiasmist, and I'm like, that's not the right word.
I like it. We're getting creative.
The enthusiast. Yes. And 8, and I was sort of joking with someone, and I said, I think maybe just because I've gotten older and I'm just more tired, that's why 8 has like, I've scaled back on the 8, which is, what are we? The challenger?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just a little tired. I'm like, I just want to have more fun now.
I just want to have a good time now.
I just want to have a good time and not be so strong and challenging. And also what was really strong was the 3. What is that? The
achiever. Yeah. And what's interesting about that is that those are all 3 the assertive types. They're all action oriented, future oriented. So
I didn't know
no matter what type, is your dominant, you're action oriented.
That's interesting. I have a good feeling there's a decent amount of threes that are listening to this because I have a lot of high achieving women in my community. Well, I think you've kind of explained it a little bit, but why is it important? Why do you feel, in your professional opinion, that it's important to know your type?
Yeah. So, I think when we understand our Enneagram type, we're able to understand where we're overworking in our life. So, when we think about these high achieving women, you think about how, we're used to striving. Striving is easy. Like that comes naturally to us. So when we're trying to undo this like striving mentality or the sense of like, I have to constantly be doing and doing, understanding like sometimes our strength is the opposite, is the exact other end of the spectrum to the things that are causing us to suffer. So, yes, high achievers are amazing at getting things done. They're amazing at being efficient. They're amazing at like looking for networking opportunities. And at the same time, they don't always listen to their heart. They don't always listen to how they feel. They might ignore their bodily needs, all in sacrifice for that end goal. But then when they get the goal, right, they might recognize at that moment, it doesn't feel the way I thought it would feel. I thought I would feel better when I got here. And so a lot of times, it can come back to what if we focus on how I feel and setting goals based off of that versus setting goals based off of what I want to achieve. So, and every single number is going to have its own version of that. So that's really specific to threes. But in general, right, it's like that strength that we have, it helps us to recognize it and then also recognize the shadow side of it.
Wow. It's so interesting to me. Like the whole Enneagram fascinates me and how people use it in so many different aspects of their life, in their spirituality, with their productivity, with their goals and their relationships. And every time I talk to someone who's an expert in it, they seem to open up another door around it that I've never heard of before. Shopify's already taken the cash register online, helping millions sell billions around the world. But did you know that Shopify can do the same thing at your retail store? Give your point of sale system a serious upgrade with Shopify. With Shopify, you get a powerhouse selling partner that effortlessly unites your in-person and online sales into one source of truth. Track every sale across your business in one place and know exactly what's in stock. Connect with customers inline and online. Shopify helps you drive store traffic with plug-and-play tools built for marketing campaigns from TikTok to Instagram and beyond. Get hardware that fits your business. Take payments by smartphone, transform your tablet into a point of sale system, or use Shopify's POS Go mobile device for a battle-tested solution. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/noise, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/noise to take your retail business to the next level today. Shopify.com/noise. Fast forward to the end of 2024 and think about your goals. What can you do right now to give yourself the best chance of succeeding? If you want to learn a new language, you absolutely should get Babbel. Don't pay hundreds of dollars for private tutors or waste hours on apps that don't really help you speak the language. Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons are handcrafted by over 200 language experts to help you start speaking a new language in as little as 3 weeks. Babbel's designed by real people for real conversations. Studies from Yale, Michigan State University, and others continue to prove Babbel is better. One study found that using Babbel for 15 hours is equivalent to a full semester at college. Now it's so easy to speak simple conversation phrases with the guy that takes care of my lawn without having to consult language apps. Here's a special limited time deal for our listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/noise. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/noise, spelled BABBEL.com/noise. Rules and restrictions may apply. Well, how do you use Enneagram in your work? So specifically, how can Enneagram encourage growth through, what you say, like curiosity and compassion versus discipline and restriction?
Yes.
And it's like one of your favorite topics.
It is. I think for a long time, we've been trained to approach growth through this like kind of rigid disciplinarian mindset of like, just, that Nike phrase, like, just do it. So we kind of wake up every day and we're like, I'm just going to do it. And instead of really looking at the data of what's not working for us, what's kind of preventing us from doing the things we want to be doing, and where we're, kind of just having a hard time, right? And so if we can approach things with curiosity and ask ourselves better questions, which I think the Enneagram helps us to do, then we can get to our results in a more gentle fashion and in a way that does less harm to ourselves over the long term. And so I'll talk about my type when I think about this. And, I'm a type 7. Type 7s, we're amazing at coming up with ideas. We're amazing at starting projects. We're great to have in a brainstorming room. We are good with people. We pick up on content really fast, but we give up more quickly. We're more likely to move on to the next thing when we're really excited about something else. When things are hard, we wonder if we've ruined our lives, like a bad day feels like, oh no, like this is a bad life. So I've learned to really harness those skills to say, okay, I'm really good at starting things. Who can I get in my team to finish them? And where am I limiting my access to success because I am uncomfortable with discomfort? Because when we remember what I think I have to be is satisfied, then I can remember I get to be more than that. I'm allowed to be unsatisfied. It's okay for me to have a moment that doesn't feel perfect to me, and I can breathe through that and get on to the next day. So a practical solution for this, when I kind of look at the data, is short-term deadlines. So meaning I commit to following through with this project for 6 months. No matter how it feels in that 6 months, I will continue to go. And then at the end of that 6 months, I can reevaluate from a non-emotional place. Now, I say that, and I want to say 8s have the opposite problem, right? 8s, you will push yourselves past your limitations, believing you have no limits, and follow through with a project and to your own detriment. And so you have kind of the opposite need in terms of getting curious. It's, where am I restricting my access to care?
All day, every day. Yeah. Just side note, it's like kind of a combination. It really depends on the project. Sometimes I will push through, especially if it's a competition involved, or if I'm like trying to prove it to someone else, which is dumb. I've come a long way from that person, but also I sort of laughed when you said, 7s were great starters, but poor follow through. I have really poor follow through. And thank goodness I've gotten to a place in my career where I have an amazing team that knows this about me. And we'll always like, Are you sure you want to start that idea? Like, here's all the work involved. And I'm like, never mind. But it's good to know. I mean, even if nothing else, your personality and how you work.
Well, you said you have a 7, you probably have a 7 wing. I have an 8 wing. So sometimes I'm really good at follow through. So those two things kind of come together and create its own little recipe.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I think and maybe, you tell me, like, I think sometimes it just depends. It depends on the thing. If it's something that I love doing, then I will take control of it. I will follow through, and it's going to be a damn good time. In my former family, I was always in charge of parties. And I know no one's probably surprised about that. And like the decor and the games and the music. And like, as long as it was a lot of work and research involved and all those things, but as long as it involved people having a good time and myself, then I will follow through. I will be a great team leader. I should have been, if this whole life coaching and author thing doesn't work out, I would be a great, not like an event planner or a party planner, but like a party planner / MC. Like that's what I would be really good at, is getting people like on the dance floor. And Tiffany Haddish did that, by the way. Like she would people get paid to do that. You get paid to like pump up the crowd. Anyway, I digress. But you were talking,
reevaluating our entire life plan.
I know. Sorry, everybody. Got a little off track there, but you mentioned, we talked a little bit about discipline, and I'm curious what you think about this, because I remember I worked with a client a few years ago, and we were doing her values, And she said that discipline was one of her values. And she had sort of gotten off track with her workout regimen and previously was like a fitness instructor and in that whole world. And just my spidey senses kind of went off. And so I just start to ask questions. I don't make assumptions. I ask a lot of questions. And as it turned out, that was something that she put a value on because she thought that that would bring her credibility, that would bring her accolades and applause. Like, oh, look how hard you work. You're so disciplined with your diet and your exercise and all of these things. And so it's interesting that, and this is, maybe indirectly related to the Enneagram. I think and maybe we're opening up a can of worms here with talking about discipline and living in a capitalistic culture and society. Yep. And I think for women particularly, we are valued for our productivity. We are valued, like the more we can get things done, whether it's in our career, whether we are mothers, whether it's within, our teams at work or whatever. Just side note for anyone who's feeling like they need to be more disciplined. Maybe what you need is rest.
Yes. And, I think our society loves a disciplined woman because they love to control women. Right. So
say more about that. Yeah.
Yeah. As long as we feel ashamed of letting ourselves enjoy life and feeling free and being wild and taking risks and putting ourselves out there, we're staying as small as physically possible, emotionally possible, mentally possible. We're keeping ourselves in these like really tight constraints. That's very convenient for the patriarchy. Whereas if we approach ourselves with compassion and release shame, and we can work toward these things that we want, doesn't mean we don't have goals. We don't have high expectations of ourselves, or not even high expectations, but just ambitions.
Right.
When we approach them from a place of curiosity and a place of compassion, well, then we can meet those same goals with more ease and with more self-confidence and less shame than when we enter into that discipline mindset where it's like, well, if I mess up on Monday, then I'm a failure on Tuesday, and I have to overcompensate and I have to continue to restrict and restrict and restrict until who I am in the core of my being no longer exists. And I'm now just like a list of things that I failed or succeeded at. Whereas we're these like living, breathing, dynamic beings who have passions and flaws and beautiful intricacies that deserve to be heard and listened to and valued.
Talk to us about ways that women can invoke rest when they feel like they need to go, go, go. Because I feel like that bridge is, for many, a giant uphill battle of, okay, but I still have all these things to do and they need to get done. And you're telling me I need to rest, and then like laughter ensues. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So, the example I give in my book is a type 9. So one of the words that gets put onto type 9s a lot is lazy, quote unquote. And I am not comfortable with that language. I much prefer to let's get into this. So when we look at it through the path of discipline, it looks like I watch more TV than I would like to, which means I'm lazy. I should wake up at 5 a.m. tomorrow and go work out. If I were driven, then that's what I would do. So then the next morning when that alarm goes off, they hit snooze and they miss their workout. And that reinforces the concept of I'm so lazy. It says to me oh, I'm a failure. I'm so lazy. Whereas the path of curiosity goes, I watch more TV than I would like to. Why do I watch TV? I'm too tired to do anything else. Well, why am I so tired? I spent all day thinking about what others needed and then trying to make them happy. So then we can go, well, what would it feel like if tomorrow I did my best to not give all of my energy away to other people? So then we're actually getting into the core of where is this lack of energy coming from? Not I'm bad, I'm lazy.
Right. So you're actually looking at the root of the problem versus thinking that you are the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And trying to control ourselves enough to make it go away.
Interesting. So I feel like I've mentioned this on the podcast before. So apologies everyone if you've heard me talk about this, but I was taking a class on a few different topics, and there was 4 different topics on habits and productivity and happiness, and it was all about the brain science, which I love to nerd out on that. It's so interesting to me. But the teacher was, and he was a man, and he was heterosexual. He's married to a woman. And they had a couple kids, and so I'm trying to be forgiving. But he was talking about the research has shown that the most brain draining activity, like the mental thing that we do that causes our battery, quote unquote, to drain so quickly, is decision making. And the constant organizing of tasks and people, and it's basically the thing that women tend to do the most of. And I'm listening to this and I'm like, oh, you're talking about us. And I actually sent him an email and I'm like, I think it would be so great if you just acknowledged that this is typically not that men don't struggle with that too, but for women, that mental load is rough sometimes. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that I think we really underestimate how exhausting that really is.
Yeah.
And that many times our exhaustion can manifest as being short with people, being impatient with our children or our coworkers or our friends.
Yeah.
Raise his hand and experience.
Yeah. Well, and this way that we're trained to focus on management of the household and then adding on our career to that, we're going to take 9 different approaches to that, right? Like when we think about the Enneagram, we're all going to do it for 9 different reasons. As a 7, I'm scared that I'm not going to have the most satisfying, beautiful life that I could possibly imagine for myself. And so if I slack, then I'm going to live an unsatisfied lifestyle. Whereas a 1 is going to think there's like a moral aspect to it. Like I'm morally failing at this.
Yeah.
3s are going to be worried about not being seen as successful. So we have like these 9 unique ways that we kind of latch onto obligations that are handed to us by the patriarchal society. And yeah, it's exhausting.
I feel like 8s want to do all of the things because they don't want to hand over control because somebody else is going to not do it as well as they do. Is that fair?
Yeah. And I think sometimes too, the messages we send to 8s is like, you can't be weak. You can't ask for help because that would make you weak. And therefore you're not strong, which means you're not doing the thing you're supposed to be doing. You're not playing the role we expect you to play.
Right. Exactly. Well, can you talk to us about practical things that someone could do to have like a loving and tender relationship with themselves?
Oh, yes, I would love to. The first thing I think about is just asking yourself more questions instead of telling yourself stories. So I think a lot of times we're going to get caught up, usually when it comes to our feelings, we have kind of 1 or 2 camps. We're either going to believe everything that our feelings have to tell us, meaning if I'm lonely, then everyone must hate me and I must be destined to be alone forever. Or we're going to invalidate our feelings to the degree that we ignore them or we try to numb them or we try to run away from them. And we say, I'm feeling lonely, buck up, kiddo, like get it together, make yourself happy or figure a way out of the situation. And the hope that I would have by kind of creating a space where you ask yourself more questions is that your feelings have a place at the table, right? Your feelings get to be felt, but they don't control the way that you engage. So your feelings aren't facts, right? The story that your feelings are telling you are not facts, but they are information as to what you want, where you're hurting, where you've been hurt before. And so you can feel them and then we can move on from there without listening to the stories they're telling us. So I think that's the first one, right? Is like removing the stories, but letting yourself feel your feelings. And I think doing that through great question asking, meaning like, why am I doing this thing? What need am I trying to meet here? Where did I get hurt here before? I think a lot of times we're scared to, or we don't even just take the time, honestly. I think we're too busy in our minds to think we're worth that time to ask those questions. And if you're at a place where you're like, I don't know how I'm going to take the time, then maybe it's time for you to hire a coach or a therapist to start that conversation with you so that you can continue that conversation with yourself.
I appreciate you acknowledging that. I just want to pause right there because I think that It's a very real thing that, there are single parents out there. There are people who maybe aren't parents, but you don't have your family around you, or you've moved to a new place and you just don't have the support system local to you. And it's a very real thing to feel so overwhelmed. And then when someone comes and says, like, you need to nurture your relationship with yourself, you need to rest more, it can be enraging. And I want to acknowledge that. Yep. And what you said, that the first place you might want to go, hopefully they have the resources to be able to do that, is with a therapist or a counselor to kind of just help them with the emotional aspect of things before they walk into the practical side of things.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to insert that. So please continue. Today's podcast is sponsored by MIDI Health. Ladies, are you over 40 like me and dealing with hot flashes, insomnia, brain fog, moodiness, some vaginal dryness, or weight gain? Don't just accept it as part of aging. These symptoms are often linked to hormonal changes during perimenopause and menopause. At MIDI Health, they get it. Their experts know what you're going through and how to help. MIDI clinicians are menopause specialists offering safe, effective, FDA-approved solutions. And guess what? MIDI care is covered by insurance. So stop pushing through it alone. Schedule a virtual visit and dive deep into your unique symptoms and health background. You'll walk away feeling heard and with a plan to start feeling better. Visit MIDI Health today and reclaim your well-being. You deserve to feel great. Book your virtual visit today at joinmidi.com. That's joinmidi.com. joinmidi.com. I have definitely been in that place where my paycheck ran out before the next one got here. Life doesn't happen bi-weekly, so why should payday? The money you earn can be in your hands today with Earnin. Earnin is an app that gives you access to your pay as you work, up to $100 per day or up to $750 per pay period. Just download the Earnin app and verify your paycheck. Then access up to $100 a day as you work and leave an optional tip. Any money you access plus tips are automatically repaid from your next paycheck. You can use Earnin to pay for a girls' night out, a last-minute gift for a loved one, or even summer camp for the kids. Make Earnin a part of your financial routine and join Earnin's over 3.5 million customers who say things like, when I think about Earnin, I think about financial stability, security. It gives me a lot of peace of mind. Download Earnin today, spelled EARNIN, in the Google Play or Apple App Store. When you download the Earnin app, type in noise under podcast when you sign up. It really, really helps the show. Noise under podcast. Subject to your available earnings, location, daily max, and pay period max. See earnin.com/TOS for details. Earnin is a financial technology company, not a bank. Bank products are issued by Evolve Bank and Trust, member FDIC.
Yeah, no, and I honestly, even with this, in my book, I talk about the honest method, and I think that's a good place, like, to start here with honoring your strengths. Sometimes that's, for some people, going to be the hardest, and for others, the easiest. But getting to a point where you generally appreciate what you bring to the table. So when we're looking at your Enneagram type, let's start with those strengths. Start with the part of the type that you're like, yes, I bring this to the table. I am a good person. I am a loving. I am high achieving. I am interesting and original. I'm intelligent and informed. I'm loyal. I'm fun. I'm strong. I'm good to be around. Like, start there, build a safe foundation before you even get into these like shadow sides, blind spots, your vices, things that aren't serving you. Well, let's appreciate yourself first so that there's a safe place. Because if you think about it in terms of like, this is a relationship, you are in a relationship to yourself. So if I were in a relationship to another person and they were looking at me and like pointing out all my blind spots and being like, hey, you need to work on this. You need to fix this. You need to, get it together, without ever saying, look at how much you're bringing to the table. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for being here. Well, that's going to feel bad. It's kind of obviously not serving you. So yes, start with your strengths and then let's get into, where are things not working?
Oh, I love that. I love that so much. Okay. I wanted to ask you about your book, and tell us the name of it.
It's the honest Enneagram.
That's what I thought. And I was like, it's either the honest Enneagram or the honest method. And I'm so sorry I don't have it written down. Like I said, my brain is not screwed on today. Thanks for being flexible here. Well, you, in the book, you talk about a lot of different things, and you have all these, these different methods and teachings. And one of them is, you encourage people to explore your contribution to relationships. So you just talked about exploring your contribution to, just to the world, your strengths, if you will. So how would somebody start with that, especially if they've had maybe a string of relationships that hasn't worked out? Because I know from personal experience, I had 2 back-to-back horrible relationships that fell apart. And I walked out of the second one thinking, I am bad at relationships. I am hard to be attached to. I'm just so difficult. All the complaints that my exes had about me have to be true, or else I would have been able to work this out. So where does someone go from there to explore their contribution to relationships?
Yeah. So, I think really what I encourage people to do is to focus on themselves in relationship, because, the question I get the most often is, how do I get my type blank partner to blank? So how do I get my type 1 partner to have more fun with me? This question around like, how do I change the person that I'm in a relationship with? And that's not the goal, right? So like all of those partners who made you feel like you were too much, thank God you're not with those people, right? Like,
wrong partners. Yeah.
Right. And I think that's like ultimately the message is like that sensation that we want to change other people is just a fruitless conversation. Because our job with the people in our lives is to love them and to support them and to be a part of them. That doesn't mean we don't have boundaries. It doesn't mean we don't have expectations. But we're going to get to those boundaries and those expectations through exploring our contribution. What am I bringing to the table? What can I truly control? What are my unmet expectations that I'm not communicating? Because again, we have these 9 ways of being, these very specific worldviews of what we think being a person is supposed to be. And I think that's one of the beauties of the Enneagram, right? Is that we've been swimming in this water, right? Like I was a 7 my whole life, and I thought, well, everybody just wants to be happy all the time. Everybody's seeking satisfaction constantly. So when someone was being pessimistic or someone was having a really hard time, I felt like they were wallowing. Like, well, why are you sitting in it? Like, you need to come on, get it together. When in reality, like, oh yeah, there's like a whole way of being. And actually I could stand to sit in it for a minute. And they're sitting over here offering me space to sit in it because they're able to wallow in it. So it really opens us up to appreciating other people and really owning what am I bringing to the table, both good and not always helpful.
Okay. I love that. Well, and I want to ask, I'm just curious about this. Where did the Enneagram come from? Didn't someone just like dream it or something and came up with it? Or am I mistaking that for a different personality test?
No, I think Claudio Naranjo says that he, that channeling's not the right word, but that he it was like free writing essentially.
Okay.
And it came out through that. However, there are earlier teachers. So George Gurdjieff and Oscar Chazo, both of those people came first. And Claudio Naranjo's kind of version of the Enneagram is kind of a morphing of their 2 earlier editions from decades ago.
Okay. And where do you recommend people, if they haven't taken it already, like, do you have a link on your site or the test there? Or do you recommend that they go to a specific website to take the real test?
I should have a test, but the truth is that I don't think tests are helpful because it's so easy to mistype. So I really just encourage you to read the type descriptions. You can do that in my book, The Honest Enneagram, or you can do that on a website like the EnneagramInstitute.com. They have great descriptions. And when you read it, you'll know.
Mm-hmm. So talk to me again about when people take the test that they often mistype. How does that happen? Like as they're answering the questions, what's happening?
Well, because the test is based off of motivation and kind of what you think you're supposed to be. So it'll ask things like, do you think it's important to be helpful? And almost every woman is going to be like, yes.
Actually, I don't know. I would answer that kind of neutral. I'm like, sometimes, but not all the time.
Yeah, right. And I think like there are some types that like, I think 3s and 8s specifically tend to be pretty clear. Like, don't mistype as often just because you're such strong characters. But, yeah, but it's pretty common to mistype just because you don't always know your motivation. And sometimes the questions are pretty vague and we're like, yeah, I think a good person would say this. We might answer on who we think we are supposed to be rather than who we are. Yeah. So
that's what I talk about when I'm talking to people about values, is that it's not, because if you read this long list of values and attributes and virtues, and all of them seem important, like, yes, I should be a courageous person, a generous person. I should value giving back and being of service. And like, quite personally, that's not one of mine. Like,
yeah. Same.
I do a little bit, but it's not my top. It's not in my top 3 for sure. And it can be easy to feel like someone's going to judge me for what my Enneagram type is or what my values are. And I could see how that would happen. And I've also thought about this and when it comes to any personality test, is it doesn't take into consideration the nuance of things like childhood trauma and, any kind of like ability or disability or class, race, like all of these things I think can matter to how you see the world and how you react to the world and your behavior. And I just think that human beings are incredibly complex.
Yeah. And there's this fun thing called overlays in the Enneagram, where if you're raised in a strong culture, whether that's a religion or a race or, the United States is a culture, maybe your family has a strong culture, that you're going to resemble those types. So I grew up Southern Baptist, a woman in a Southern Baptist church. So like I typed as a 2 because,
they're the pleasers, right?
Yeah. That's a pretty strong Christian overlay. But my dominant type is a 7.
That's so fascinating. Okay. Well, tell everyone where definitely put a link to your site and your socials and your book in the show notes, but where do you want people to go to learn more about you and to follow you online?
Yeah. So I actually have a podcast. It goes 5 days a week, every single
You do.
weekday.
And I've been on it.
Yes, and Andrea's been on it, so you guys can come check it out. It's Enneagram and Coffee on iTunes or anywhere you listen to podcasts. That's like the most informational place that I would check out, or come hang out with me on Instagram. I'm Sarajane Case on Instagram now.
Sarajane Case on Instagram. You do podcasts 5 days a week?
I do 5 days a week. I know.
Oh my gosh, you are a type 2.
That's some like seven behavior. Yeah.
Let's have fun. And I am going to please everyone by giving you so many podcast episodes. I love this conversation, and I love how it's slightly different when I talk to different Enneagram experts. And it's such a fun thing, I think. And everyone, thank you so much for being here. I value your time so much. Sarajane, thank you for being here. Is there anything that we missed that you want to make sure that we cover before we say goodbye?
Oh, thank you. No, I feel great. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. And everyone listening, remember, it's our life's journey to make ourselves better humans and our life's responsibility to make the world a better place. Bye for now. Hey everyone, thanks again for listening to the show. And just a quick reminder that if your company needs a speaker or a trainer, I might be the right person for you. I speak and do keynotes on confidence and resilience for mixed audiences, as well as do trainings on the Daring Way, which is the methodology based on the research of Dr. Brené Brown. So if you think it might be a good fit, hit me up at support@AndreaOwen.com or head over to my speaking page, AndreaOwen.com/speaking.
I'd like to introduce you to the Minimalist Moms podcast. It's hard enough being a mom, and the last thing you need is stress from too much stuff and an overcrowded schedule. For too long, I lived with the mindset that bigger was better, and the more I added to my life, instead of feeling better, I felt overwhelmed. It was time for a radical new mindset. Less is more. I'm not into extremes. I didn't throw everything away. My brand of minimalism is more about adding than subtracting. Get rid of the excess to make room for what you love. In other words, it's about living life with purpose. I hope you'll listen in, and my guest and myself can inspire you to think more and do with less. The Minimalist Moms Podcast, available wherever you listen to podcasts.